Ever feel like you're living in the Truman Show? It's possible that we're living in some type of dumb reality show that God watches when he wants to decompress at the end of the night. For now, let's examine how the Truman Show is telling the same exact story as the tarot. Like all great stories, our hero starts off as the Fool. The Fool represents Truman's innocence as well as the journey that he's about to embark on. We're going to be referencing the Diary of Domestic Tarot workbook, where it breaks down the Fool's journey, which is how the hero's journey relates to the major arcana. And this image perfectly mirrors the opening sequence, even down to the fact that a dog jumps on Truman right before he innocently begins this journey. The next step of our journey is the call to action and the refusal of the call, which happens when a stage light falls out of the sky and it says "serious" on it. This begins Truman's journey from fool to magician. And this is when Truman starts to take things into his own hands, attempting to control traffic, starts noticing weird patterns. Now, the next step of the journey is to meet the mentors. The next 5 cards embody those archetypes. And most stories will only have 1 or 2 of these mentors. Now, in the case of the Truman Show, it would be the Lover's card, which is the mentor. And that's because it's his relationship with Sylvia that makes him question his reality. But according to this book, Worst Enemy, Best Teacher, sometimes our adversaries are hidden mentors. So let's take a look at that interpretation. Now, Meryl, Truman's wife, could kind of be interpreted as the reversed high priestess, which can represent hidden motives and being superficial. Now, the next step of our hero's journey is crossing the threshold, which is represented by the Chariot and the Strength cards. This is when Truman decides that he's going to leave his island that he lives on and go to Fiji. However, when he attempts to get on a boat, his fear takes over and he cannot get on that boat. So then he goes to a travel agent and he decides he's gonna fly. The travel agent says, "Oh no, you can't fly out of here. There's no flights." And this is where the Strength card comes in. Truman gets in his chariot, his vehicle, and he drives over the bridge, he drives over water, he drives through fire, and then when police try to stop him, he gets out on foot and starts running. Next, we have tests, allies, and enemies, presented by the Hermit, the Wheel of Fortune, and the Justice card. And this is where Truman starts to embody the Hermit card himself by becoming more withdrawn and removing himself from his outer world. Next, we have the Wheel of Fortune. This could be an unexpected turn of events. And this is where Truman's allies become his enemies. He starts to think his wife might be in on it. And then we have the Justice card. And this is when the truth actually comes out. Just as Truman is unsure whether he's crazy or not, a cop says, "Have a nice day, Truman." Now, even though Truman doesn't know that the whole world is watching, he knows that this stranger, knowing his name, is something significant. And this is when Truman approaches the innermost cave. And this is represented by the Hanged Man. And this represents the uncertainty. And this is represented by Truman's best friend. Truman thinks he knows what's going on. Then his friend says, "I've known you since we were 7 years old, Truman. Of course there's nothing going on." Next, we have the Death card. But in this situation, it actually represents Truman finding out that his dad was not dead, as well as the death of the old Truman. So next, we have the Temperance card. This is the part of the film where we start to pull back from the Truman Show and go behind the scenes more. And just as the creator is being interviewed on live TV, a phone call comes in from Sylvia, who had been kicked off the show after she tried to tell Truman that it was all a TV show. And from the outside world, she has been defending him. And Temperance can sometimes symbolize a guardian angel, but also it can symbolize Sylvia's patience in waiting for Truman to get out. Then we have the Devil card, which of course is the creator of the show, which symbolizes oppression, obsession, imposing limitations. And this is the point that we really understand the extent of what has happened to Truman. We find out that this show has been on for 30 years, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We go through the history of all the people who tried to save Truman from this, but the creator always stepped in. We even find out that Truman was born as a premature baby, and the way that they talk about it is that he just couldn't wait to get on camera. We see that Truman was the first ever child to be adopted by a corporation. And this card also represents the materialism of it all, how every single thing on the show was for sale. Which leads us to the tower. This is when Truman pretends to be sleeping, tricks the cameras, and attempts to escape the entire show. Finally, they locate Truman, and he's on a boat and has overcome his fear of water. The creator is so desperate to keep the show going that he literally attempts to kill him with weather and drown him out at sea. Instead, no, there's hope. And then the moon card represents the illusion. Now, what's interesting about the moon card and this movie is that the creator and the whole production team is inside the moon. So the illusion is literally inside of the moon. And they also turn the moon into a spotlight to find him when he's trying to escape. We so beautifully see this illusion come to light when Truman's sailboat crashes into the side of the set. And then quite literally, the sun comes out. It could be success, happiness, truth, as well as the inner child. Because at this point, it's almost as if Truman is being born again for the first time. And this brings us to the final judgment. Truman must make the final decision in front of millions of people. Does he stay in this fake world with everything that he knows, or does he walk through that door, not even knowing what's on the other side? It so beautifully mirrors the world card. Truman with both arms out, seemingly floating in the clouds, and the cycle is done. Now, if you haven't seen my last two videos, go check them out because I did the same thing for The Matrix and Alice in Wonderland. If you go to my Substack, I made 12 journal prompts for you to reflect on your own hero's journey. Like, what was your call to adventure? Have you refused the call, and how did you eventually overcome it? Who was the meet the mentors part of your journey? Most importantly, if you were to look back at your life as a wise old elder, what legacy would you want to leave behind? If you go to my Substack, it's in my bio. You can download the 12 journal prompts and fill them in yourself.